Disclaimer: the following episode is not used for medical diagnostics. It is an episode of my own opinion and advice. Please do enjoy. Welcome back to another episode. Today's topic is about stress and anxiety with a story time. So grab your cup, take a seat, and get your fill of Talk with Ray every day. Today's episode is going to be broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 is about what stress is, its signs and effects on the body. Part 2 is about anxiety and its signs and stress on the body. Part 3 is a story time about how I've dealt with stress and anxiety in my own life. So sit back, relax, and let's start the show. Our first topic of this episode is stress. Now, what exactly is stress? Stress can be classified as physical, mental, or emotional strain or tension, or the feeling of being overwhelmed or unable to cope with mental or emotional pressure. Now, stress can be in different forms. It could be in a simple form of just trying to get good grades to get into a good school. It can be peer pressure. It can be wanting to prove to people you are that person that they think you are. Or stress could be big, like financial stress, trying to get into a good apartment, a good house, trying to get a car, trying to get a job. Stress comes in many different ways and forms. And ultimately, it's just that overwhelming feeling of, I have to do this. Like, if I don't do this, it's going to make things worse, or it's going to be harder, or it's just an overwhelming feeling of anxiousness. As we all know, stress can come in different shapes and forms. So shapes and forms are also known as signs and or symptoms. The symptoms can be as little as difficulty relaxing or headaches, maybe even insomnia, because all the stress on your mind is just causing your body to freak out internally, and because of this you're losing sleep. Now you have nervousness or inability to focus, and maybe you might have a change in appetite, maybe because of the stress that you are holding in. You're eating a lot less, or you're eating a lot more because you don't know what to do with yourself. Now, there's physical forms also, like nail biting or pacing or fidgeting. Maybe, you don't know what to do with your hands, or your leg is bouncing up and down because the stress that you're holding in is now coming out in these physical manifestations because you need to let this stress go. And that's the only way your body, unfortunately, knows how to let that stress go. Now that we know the signs and symptoms of stress, what is the effect of stress on our bodies? Well, the effect of stress on our bodies could be from mental health issues. It can lead to depression, anxiety, all these other mental conditions, because we're holding in this negativity and it's stressing our brain out to where it's causing these issues to where we feel a certain way or we act a certain way because we're holding in this negativity. It could lead to heart disease, heart failure, stroke, because ironically we're stressing our bodies out and our bodies can't handle it. It can lead to eating disorders, much like these symptoms that we said. Change in appetite. You can eat too much, you can eat too less, because we don't know what to do with our bodies. It can lead to stomach problems, upset stomach, acid reflux, all these other stuff, because what? Stress. It could even cause skin and hair problems. Our hair could fall out. We can have rashes and all these weird things happening to our body because we hold this negativity in. Instead of letting the stress out, our bodies are trying to cope with it. And unfortunately, it's unhealthy to keep in all that toxin or that stress or the negativity. And ultimately, if we keep it in too long, it might just kill us. And that wraps up the What is Stress portion of our episode. After this short break, it'll be What is Anxiety? And later on is story time with a personal story of how I've dealt with stress and anxiety in my life. Be right back. And we are back now. In this portion of the episode, we are talking about anxiety. Now, what is anxiety? It can be classified as intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. Now, anxiety can come in multiple forms, very much like stress. It can come in generalized anxiety, meaning you're just anxious 24/7, no matter how many time somebody says everything's gonna be okay, you're just gonna worry. You're just gonna think the worst is gonna happen. You're not gonna be able to fix anything, not be able to do anything. And it's just no one can help that worry go away. It can also come in as maybe social anxiety, meaning if you're in a large group and you maybe don't know anybody and you're just walking around like, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. What am I going to do? Who am I going to talk to? How am I going to get out of here? You're thinking of every possible question that comes in your head at warp speed. And anxiety is essentially that it's worry, it's fear of what is going to happen and how can I fix it and what if this happens, what if that happens. It's the what if questions of the world coming into your mind and into your life at warp speed, and pretty much you can't do anything about it but to be anxious. Now that we know what anxiety is, what's the signs and symptoms of anxiety? Well, it can be restlessness, meaning you can't sit still, you gotta keep moving. If you sit still for too long, it builds up this anxiousness, like something's gonna happen. It can be hyperventilation, meaning your breathing becomes rapid, you can't catch your breath, it's almost like you're panting. Insomnia is another one. Very much like stress. Those anxious thoughts are running through your head at warp speed. And because of these thoughts, your body can't rest. Maybe you have a sense of impending danger. Like something's going to happen. Whatever you do, something's going to happen. And you're just worrying yourself to death of what could possibly happen. Maybe you have this sign of trembling, meaning your body is shaking because you're so anxious, you're so worried what's going to happen. Or maybe you have the urge to avoid things, like big crowds or, elevators, heights, things that just makes your body tremble or shake or maybe give you goosebumps because just thinking of what ifs gets you so anxious and so worried that you avoid these places. These are just common symptoms of anxiety. And in life, these symptoms can sometimes actually stop us from doing what we love and what we want to do because we're just have this impending doom mentality. And because we have that impending danger mentality, we tend to have these effects of anxiety on our bodies. Now, anxiety effects are very similar or much the same as the stress effects. It can cause mental health issues, heart disease, eating disorders, and so on and so forth. Because, believe it or not, stress and anxiety go hand in hand. With all these anxious thoughts, we're stressing on our bodies, and stressing on our bodies can lead to these serious conditions or these serious consequences on our bodies. And, you know, unfortunately, like a lot of times we can't avoid, stress or we can't avoid anxiety because it's part of our everyday lives. But to know these signs and these effects, that's what will help us to overcome it. And that wraps up the anxiety portion of our episode. Up next is our story time, but that'll be right after this short break. Stay tuned. Now is the portion everyone's been waiting for. It is story time or ranting. It depends on how this comes out. But this story time is about how I've dealt with stress and anxiety in my own life. I've have stress and anxiety my entire life. I've actually been diagnosed with generalized anxiety and social anxiety. I hate crowds or crowded places. I try to avoid them at all costs. And I'm constantly worried about everything in my life, about every moment of my life, and people that I love and hold dear to me. I care about them and I worry about them. But no, like I can remember, when I was younger, of how stressed out I was. It was whether it was grades, whether it was expectations, referring back to episode 1, um, whether it was society's depiction of what a woman, and for those who are wondering, a black woman, what her standard of the world is supposed to be. It caused a lot of stress and anxiety in my own life. I didn't know until I got older. And I know I still have forms of stress and anxiety even now because it's part of, our everyday lives. But I learned a couple of good coping mechanisms that I would like to share with you guys. One is find a hobby that I love. I have a lot of hobbies. I have stuff from writing fanfics to baking to drawing to making diamond art. I have a lot of hobbies. So I try to at least do one hobby a day to just relax and let those anxious thoughts go away, let the stress melt away, because holding all that in it corrupts our bodies, you guys. Another mechanism that I learned is have a group of friends that understand you for you. Get people that understand you for you. Because if you're surrounded by people who are just toxic or make fun of you or forcefully try to change you, it just adds to that stress, to that anxiety. Drop them. Drop them, drop them, drop them. Get people that understand you for you. Get people that can understand, like, sometimes you don't want to do something because something might have happened, and because of that anxiety and that stress of that event comes back in your head every time you see that certain event. So, get people that understand you for you. Like, these are two really good mechanisms that I have learned over my years of dealing with stress and anxiety. And it helps in every situation, whether it's school, whether it's family, whether it's spouse, job, any type of stress and anxiety. Do something that you love. Find a hobby, whatever it is, hopefully legal. Find a hobby and do it. And find a group of people that understand you for you, that love you for you, and care for you. Don't be around people that's just going to feel the fire of stress and anxiety. Find someone who can soothe it instead. But that's pretty much my story time / rant. But I can't say there was a time I remember when I was little. I was so worried about bringing home this C because I'm like, I had an expectation of like an A student, right? And I got a C on this test, and it stressed me so out that I became sick. I physically became sick because I was just so worried to bring home this little C grade and for it to literally be nothing because the entire class basically failed. Or another example is when I was younger, I got sent to the detention lab for something that wasn't even my fault, you guys. Like, I was trying to tell this little kid that was supposedly my best friend, hint, hint, that, I was asking her to be quiet, and I got in trouble for being a good student. And I'm like, crap a doodle. Like, yo, how am I gonna get in trouble? And I'm being a good student. I remember I was so scared. I was stressing myself out. I was so anxious. I became sick because how was I going to explain this to my mother? How did I get in trouble for something I didn't do and got sent to detention? How am I going to explain that to my mother? I blackmailed my dad. But those are just a couple examples of my life where I was just so stressed out. It made me sick. Yeah, it's physically sick. And that's not okay. You should never get sick, physically sick, because of so much stress and anxiety. So find something that you love and do it at least once a day. And find people that love you for you and care about you. Those are the two best mechanisms I've ever found out when it came to dealing with my stress and anxiety. And that's the end of this episode, folks. Remember, stress and anxiety is a part of life. We can avoid it, but it's what we do about it that counts. Take at least 5 minutes a day and do something that you love, whether it's writing, watching movies, taking a run, or just being by yourself. Take that moment to relax and enjoy you. See you next time on Talks with Ray every day. Love ya.